Morning and welcome. Welcome to Construction Skills annual training launch for 15-16. I'd also like to acknowledge Graham Carpenter, my chairman. I'd like to acknowledge directors past and present who are here. I'd like to welcome Susan Warhope, Deputy Director General Training. Welcome to the training space and all of those thousands of acronyms that we use. Jim Watterson did send his apologies about 10:30 last night, as Graham mentioned. And most importantly, thank you to you, because you're the group that we have selected as industry leaders and industry influencers to take the first tranche of what we're up to over the next 12 months. This morning, if you can indulge me for 20 minutes, I'm going to outline what we do in our business, why we do what we do. We don't build planes, but we sure do build the skilling, capability and capacity of our industry. We are in the business of determining what skills are needed, where and when. So this morning I'll set out what our business undertakes, how we see the world, how we formulate this thing called the annual training plan. Before I start, if you're not connected to CSQ and you want to be fed, informed, we've got an app. And it's a really nice, simple, easy to use app. And it's the app that you have a brochure on your table. We want to ensure, and you heard me say this last year, we've put a lot of time and energy into our digital channels. We want to ensure that employers and employees can be connected. They can be connected for their business development, connected for their career development, as and when they need to be. It's no longer about what we think industry needs when information is available or when skilling funding is available. It's about when our employers and our employees. So let me start. We've got a 3-year map. We've developed a 3-year strategy and it's built upon industry feedback and economic research. But I just want to set out some of the principles that we've developed our 3-year plan. And everything you see this morning will be on our website. So we are looking at an industry over the next 3 years. And I said to Mary Campbell, settle in, this is how it's going to be for the next 3 years. A new normal, we're past the mega project. It's a $25 billion sector. We don't see any significant public infrastructure that wasn't already planned. So we don't see any new projects coming on. That's not to say something doesn't pop up, but this is the basis of our plan. We don't see any new large privately funded projects coming. Remember, the ones we knew about, and we factored them in. We do see a steady growth in the residential sector, and we see that continuing. We don't use the word boom. We also know that in this setting, training remains fundamental. Training remains a core ingredient of our industry. So no matter what the economic activity is, there will be training. And we will deliver it under our 3 domains: attract, develop and retain. And I'll take you through those this morning. And as Graham mentioned, we've put a bit of a target around how we package up our response to this industry by producing a regional workforce plan. And we've got 10 of those. And I'm going to talk you through those shortly. And finally, we work on the one-to-many, because we can't be all things to 225,000 employees in our industry, or all things to 80,000 plus small businesses. So we're working with employers, employees through our partners, many of which are here today, so that we can ensure that we tailor the response to the industry sector. And finally, this can't be achieved without the working relationship we have with our training suppliers, the registered training organisations. So that's our landscape, that's our mix. And like any business, I just want to give you a little taste of the fact that we have a plan of how we do business, how we run our business, how we produce our ATP. So we're like any other business. We've got a 3-year roadmap, we've got an annual plan, we've got a whole range of rules, and we've got a whole range of strategies that assist us to shape how we're going to deliver our services to industry. And so this morning I'll fly you over those. And if you wish to get more deeply involved, I'm sure we can put you in touch with someone from CSQ who has a greater understanding. At CSQ, we are the champions of the skilling policy, skilling landscape of the construction industry in Queensland. And we need a clear line of sight. We need to be able to see what's happening out there. We need to be able to listen to what's happening in industry. But most importantly, it needs to be accurate, reliable and timely. Because if we're going to be the trusted advisors to this industry, we better have our finger on the pulse. So let me talk to you a little bit about how we pull this together. I call it our algorithm. Start with the demand side. I can't say what I normally say in the office because it's probably not appropriate when we're being filmed, but let's just say there's a basic set of few rules we have around CSQ. We better know what we're talking about and it better be real. So what's actually happening out there? Not what we think, not what others think, but collectively, what does the demand equation for activity look like? And we do that by asking ourselves what's happening in each region, what's happening in communities, what's happening in sectors, what's happening in residential, civil, off-site services, commercial, heavy engineering and major projects. What's the real work? And we're not interested in hearsay, we're interested in combining what we hear and what we know from approvals, what we know from economic data to produce the demand position. Because you've heard us say, we don't train because it makes us feel good. We train because it links to a workforce that's needed for a demand environment. Second very complex part of our algorithm, supply. So if we're going to build something, we need to know who's going to be on that job site. What's the workforce profile going to look like? How many are there? So our supply side assessment is prepared using a whole bunch of economic data, census data. We've got a skills calculator running in the background. Is that right, Rob? Runs all day, all night, somewhere in Canberra. And we get a sense of what it looks like at a regional level. We don't go down to town or suburb level because it's inaccurate the day we publish it. But what we do is we have a body of evidence that supports what our skills profile for our state looks like by job vocation, by sector, by region. And that allows us to ask a pretty simple question. So what? So what should we do on behalf of industry to skill the capability of our businesses, the capacity of our individuals to respond? What should we do? And we determine a result and we put together what you will see today as our annual training plan. Because at the end of the day, it's about, to the best of our ability, on behalf of those small businesses particularly who don't have the engine room in the back, to work out where are the skills, where do they need to be, and what do they need to look like. I talked about regional workforce plans. And I think it's really important that we're connected tightly with what a region looks like. So we've produced, and Stacey's with us today, our Manager of Workforce Planning. Stacey's produced really, but Stacey, thank you for the we. 10 workforce profiles, which we're going to make public. And those 10 workforce profiles set out what do we think the CSQ algorithm says to us in each of the regions. Because what we know is no two regions are the same, no two sectors are the same. Therefore, no two responses can be exactly the same. Now, we can't be all things to all people and have multiple combinations and permutations of responses. But to the best of the ability, the resources we have and our approach, we can tailor a response so that what you see in southeast Queensland is not what you're going to see in far north Queensland because of the evidence. What's also really important about these plans is it assists us with our policy making role, our role with state and federal governments to guide and assist what skills policy should look like, what skills funding should look like. So we work closely with governments to ensure that there is no duplication, there is no crossover, so that the construction industry in Queensland gets the best return on every dollar available to it from all parties, not just from CSQ. And that's been working well for some time, and we will continue to work in that partnership with governments. Okay, so a little bit about CSQ. What does it look like? So we break it down into what everybody knows CSQ about, and that is the ATP. What do we buy? And I'll talk to you about those three areas. But this morning I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk you through what do we do? What are these services that you see Construction Skills Queensland, or you don't see, providing to different parts of our industry? And on the right-hand side, I've broken them into the 4 areas. So let me start by taking you through that. Evidence and data. We went away from the word research because it means primary research, and some of us don't really like the whole research thing. So we talk about evidence and data. How do we make decisions based on not guessing? So our role is to ensure that we understand the landscape. This is my demand-supply conversation. We look back. And Robert this morning is going to talk a little bit in a bit more detail about how this is happening. But we do look back. We ask ourselves, what have we learned from the last 3 years? But our core focus is, what's the world look like now? 3 to 5, and a little bit of work and an exciting project we're going to announce this morning about what does the world look like in the future for our industry. But what's really important is that what we produce in our evidence and data space is scalable, readable, and applicable. Applicable to a Tyler and Dolby, applicable to a major project construction site manager, applicable to an industry body looking to shape an apprentice program. So we don't want to be too clever by halves in the work that we undertake. Marketing and comms. An area that we've spent quite a lot of time and energy over the last 18 months reshaping. But I wanted to highlight, and Graham gave some good results to date in his opening address, but our digital connection is up and running. We are using technology as a tool. We are no different to any other business. But we do it in a way that we ensure that our investment in marketing and communications is assessed for a return to industry. Why sponsor? Why turn up at an event? Why support your awards night? We are asking ourselves internally, is this a good vehicle to pass our messages to industry and listen to industry? We are not doing it because it's fun. While some of us do enjoy that, we are doing it because it has a business return. So in our annual plan, this strategy of using money to talk to industry and listen to industry is crucial for us understanding how best to shape our response. And it's also important to maintain those working relationships with many of you in the room. Industry relationships. You've met Lauren. We have a program, we have lots of information. But we've charged Lauren and the team at Strategic Industry Relationships to manage our one-to-many strategy. How will you work with our industry partners, our unions, our government stakeholders to spread the message about what our industry needs for skilling, how we're going to skill, what programs we've bought? So our relationship with you and with industry is important that we, again, don't have the same relationship with the civil sector that we have with the residential sector, because they're not the same. So the conversations that Lauren and her team have to be tailored, have to be different. And we're shaping up a team of people. And for those of you who have worked in major projects or worked around major projects, whereby we're using the same model for residential, for civil, for some industry community, Indigenous communities that have got a dedicated demand profile where we can shape a skilling response. And I'll talk a bit more about how we're going to do that. So our industry engagement team is charged with the responsibility of knowing. And My test is they need to know before I know, because often I know, unfortunately, a bit faster than sometimes the team. So that's their KPI. So again, we do our industry engagement across sectors, and we're allocating resources across sectors. Policy. We wouldn't be a thought leader if we weren't shaping and influencing policy. We wouldn't be able to use our evidence and data if we didn't turn it into a program response in our ATP. So we're the organisation that coordinates training packages. We're the organisation that works with government on discussion papers, white papers, position papers, but most importantly, the phone call that we get more often than not is, hey CSQ, what do you think about this? And that's our space. We want to be that organisation, but we need to know the answer. So we've got a small policy team that shapes those responses, because it's a very different set of skills to be able to provide advice underpinned by evidence and consideration than it is to talk to industry and listen to industry. And finally, Jeff Clare gets a slide this year for the first time. He gets a budget every year, but he needs to get a slide. We need some back of house business support. So that's Jeff's slide to make him feel good, because he never wants to speak and he doesn't want to be in the public light, but he's our solid company secretary and he uses a whole bunch of our resources to run our business. We've got IT systems and facilities, etc., HR, and I just want to acknowledge that that's part of doing business. Okay, so that's just a short overview of our business services, how we run our business. So what are we going to buy this year? Attract. So the details in front of you. In the attract domain, and can I say personally, this is by far the most important domain and by far the most important area that we need to think about as an industry over the next 5 to 10 years. We are absolutely battling a talent war. And it's important that our industry ensures that we are viewed credible, professional, safe, and with a future. This is what influences of young people. This is what influences of people looking for careers who are in their 30s will be asking themselves. So by creating a positive image, using multiple pathways to get into our industry, our Attract program is shifting. We've worked for a long time with schools in a very targeted way and in a very sharp way. But not every school was able to participate. Not every student in Queensland was able to get involved. So we've broadened our approach and we're shaping up a new response called Future Workforce Program, which we'll release in October. So we're phasing out, at this point, our D2C programs. And I use the word phasing out. In our languages, they're up on the shelf. We don't bury anything. We just put it up on the shelf. It may come back in the future. In our Attract space, we are looking to prepare the industry. We are looking to support our industry to get into the workforce. It is not solely about school kids. They are one of many that come in, but more and more, as you would all be aware, career changes, change of circumstances, see many coming into our industry. Post-school, post-settling down, mortgages, families and the like. We want to ensure that you can get into our industry at whatever age suits you based on a skills profile and a job matching service. I was going to reference an app, but I can't use that either. It's because we're being filmed. But let's just say we are not a recruiting agency, but we're going to be in the business of supporting those who want to work and pointing them in the direction of where the work is. This is not something that's unfamiliar with us, but we're going to do it on a statewide scale. So no matter where you live, no matter what part of the sector you want to get into, we want to be able to be the organisation that facilitates you towards those decisions. And finally, we'll keep our Trade Start program running again this year. Trade Start is our post-school pre-employment program. We've had plenty of success at it, and we will continue to operate in that space. We will phase out our employer incentive programs associated with our school-based programs. We will honour those who are in the system at the moment. So if you're in our school-based programs, we will honour those employer incentives until you complete your program. Attract is the area that I think we will start to shift more resources into as we go forward. I think that how we talk to the future workforce and the skills, the time and the energy it takes to prepare someone to work in our industry is not something we're seeing happening on a daily basis across our SME environment, and that's understandable. So we want to be that organisation to help that resource. Develop. So we've got a workforce. We need to keep developing their skill capability to meet the needs of the jobs, future jobs, where the sectors are shifting, transitioning between sectors. So this is a staple for us. The developed domain sees us work with existing workers to keep building their skills profile, to keep developing the skills they need to get the job done. You'll be familiar with those terms on the slide. They're our core programs, and they'll continue in our ATP going forward. The evidence says they're required. Retain. We've made some changes in Retain. This is where we work with businesses. This is where we work with large volume propositions. We're going to phase out student contribution fees. We don't believe it's the best return on investment. It's a significant amount of our budget, sneaking beyond 40%. It doesn't face the apprentice. So our evidence and our research and our feedback says that we'll phase that out and redirect some of those funds. We're going to shape our workforce coordinator program. We have had coordinators in Indigenous communities, major projects, regional settings, across enterprises. In the main, we're putting one program together because we want to take the opportunity that when we invest into a setting that has a large skilling capability across a time frame, like a major project, like an Indigenous strategy for a particular group of communities, like that where a business has 5 or 6 significant projects, we want to be able to capitalise on that opportunity. We want to be able to capitalise on, there's a large volume of people, it's an opportunity to get some skilling undertaken, and it's an easy way to organise them. So our Workforce Coordinator program, which is an invitation program, it has been released, and it's a program that is bringing together all of those opportunities in those settings. And many of you here today are participating in that already in different iterations. We're retiring apprentice recommencement incentives, a GFC-inspired program. This program was developed because we were losing apprentices at alarming rates. We needed them re-engaged in our industry. So the environment has reset. The economic trends have settled down. We're not seeing the loss of apprentices, we're seeing apprentice growth. We're seeing apprentice growth in construction industry, particularly in the southeast corner, particularly in the residential space. So this program isn't working as hard as it could be. It's not something that's needed, so we're redirecting. We're redirecting that response. And finally, the one that gives everybody a challenge, Construction Futures. Let me talk about Construction Futures. Construction Futures is a dedicated program where we work with entities, organisations, so as that we can partner with them to develop, learn, explore, or test something that's currently not present in our industry, or is going to be something that's coming to our industry, something we don't really know a lot about or understand. What it's not a program that we currently run with a 10 to 12% variation What it's not is something that suits a single business and it suits their need. What it is, it has a whole of industry approach, whole of industry applicability. So in our Construction Futures program, you can be invited. We might come and talk to you, or industry might come and talk to us. And we shape the conversation. There's a range of criteria that will be, or are available for our terms and our an appropriate application process. That's Construction Futures. So let me summarise. And I didn't specifically go into each number because you can read, there's a core summary page in our ATP. But I wanted you to get a sense of the world that we developed this ATP in. We've invested $33.5 million. Our revenue base is 25, and it's been falling for some years, as many of you know. We've used our retained earnings policy, and we've made it work for the last 3 years. So we're spending our savings to keep the skilling profile moving in this state. And we've reduced our operating expenses as well. We're no different to any other business. We've got to shape, move, respond. Our revenue's down, we've got to cut our cloth accordingly. So we're watching our bottom line. We do think the industry is going to be more of the same for the next couple of years. We do think residential sector has our focus. We do think southeast Queensland is where the action is. And we will be saying in some regional centres, if you want to get involved in the construction space, you may have to move. Because it's by far better to be honest with businesses. It's better to be honest with those that are influencing young people coming to our industry about where the work is. There is no point skilling up with the expectation you're going to get a job if you live in a part of the world where there's no cranes and you want to be a crane driver. We will focus on workforce and our future, and you'll see a lot of coming out in the next quarter about what that means, what that looks like, and we'll run some special sessions on how to get involved in that program. And workforce coordinators for me are a key, because the return on investment by putting someone inside a large setting that provides lots of training opportunity has paid dividends for us in the past. There's a whole lot of ways. This one's especially for Warwick. This is yours, Warwick. Lots of ways to get involved. I know that you're technology keen, using, I see Warwick twittering a lot now. I'm pretty excited. I recall the time, Warwick, we were a bit sceptical about some of this technology. The ATP is available. Please talk to us. If you'd like your business, your sector, your organisation, your entity to have a specific briefing, ask me, ask someone, and we'll arrange for that to happen if that's of any value to you. Thanks for your time this morning, and enjoy the rest of the presentations. Thank you.
Joe's Civil Contractors Federation is very impressed with the evidence-based approach. I was particularly impressed this morning with the data and the research that was shown, and the trends that we're seeing in the industry. Some of that stuff is really exciting, but also challenging, and something we're going to have a real hard look at for the future. Well, the civil sector is going through a tough time now, as we know. But what we're really happy about is 2.4 million has been put aside specifically for the civil sector, particularly in the areas of gap training. So we've got a workforce that is very skilled, but sometimes needs their qualifications brought to fruition, and that is definitely a mechanism where that can be done. The other area is trade start, for instance, and that is an area for those who have left school but are aspiring to get into the industry. There's something like $900,000 made available to the civil sector for that, and again, we're very, very happy about that.
I think the evidence-based approach is really the only way to go, Joe, because at the end of the day, one size is not going to fit all, and Queensland's a very big place and it's regionally very different. So a targeted approach and an evidence-based approach is the only way from a training perspective that we can go into the future. Benefit the residential sector because it can be regionally tailored, and that's really important to the residential sector because it's distinctly different in each of the regions, and it's also going to look at the shortages of skills and focus on the skills pathways that we need to develop into the future to make sure the residential sector can skill up and be profitable for a long term.
Well, I think it's got great potential. I think the fact that we can actually drill down into where the real requirements are for the dollar spend for training will be a big advantage for the industry generally, but particularly in the services trades where there's such a random disbursement of plumbers, for example, fire protection people across Queensland. It's important for us to know where the real need is, and that will also mean things like we can more focus our industry-owned training organisations with their training delivery prioritisation. So we think it's a great idea. First of all, I'd like to say that CSQ is genuinely the long-term partner of the services trades when it comes to skills. Plumbing, fire protection. For many years now, CSQ has been our primary partner in enabling us to deliver the skills that we need to deliver to industry. I think the thing that really attracted me to the plan this year is particularly the segment planning for our workforce growth, in terms of being able to deliver additional training beyond just apprenticeships in a much more focused way. I guess the most constant thing in the services trades nowadays is that change is the most constant element within our industry, in the building and construction industry. And that change is driven by a number of things: cultural change, technology change, product change. And so what we need to bring about is a greater sense of needing to continually educate our workforce about that technological change, about the impact on culture, about the changes to product material, and the focus that this training plan has on continually engaging with tradespeople in a post-trade sense is a great thing for the industry. So I see that as a big plus out of the training plan.